didn't see you there. Sorry, I've been wrapped up in work. Cool. Thanks for coming. Actually, now that you're here, there's been something on my mind. I've been working so much with pedals over the last 4 months, and I've had so many cool conversations with all the builders that make these pedals a reality that I started to wonder, how do you know when a pedal is finished? How do you know when done means done? Especially when there's so many pedals out there claiming to do everything under the sun already. I feel like it takes a certain level of confidence for a builder to know, okay, I'm about to put this out into the world. How many variations and iterations are you guys going through before we, the players, actually get our hands on it? So I reached out to a few of my friends, and thankfully they were all hanging out in this one spot called the internet. So let's see what they have to say about it. You can come along too.
We have a saying in Dr. Scientist where the third time is the charm.
We definitely need a try or three to get everything just perfect. And yeah, nowadays here in 2022, 3 tries and we got it nailed.
Sometimes it can be hard to know when something's finished, but it's a lot like finishing any other creative project where the more clear you can make your goals, the more easy it is to determine when you have achieved them. If you're just setting out to do something and you're constantly asking yourself, is it cool? You can spend a long time doing that. And if you have a really clear goal, it's a lot easier to say, I did it, I achieved my goal. Usually Rev B is the first releasable version of something. And then I might go through some minor revisions as they go by. Like Una and WAMP are both on Rev E right now. And that seems to be a nice sort of sweet spot. Hard sometimes because you can your goals change as you make something, and that can really set you back. It's important to know that only you can say when something's done.
I've had some Tonal Recall I thought was finished probably 25 times. Now since Knobs is on our staff, it's kind of when he says it is, but he's such a perfectionist that it's usually when he has 5 complaints instead of 5,000. But I love that about him because he's such a perfectionist and wants everything to be perfect.
Hey Crone, it's Charles Henry with Silktone Amplifiers. So that's tough. It took me forever to finish our first amp and pedal. I want to tweak it to make it the best it possibly can be, but I've found that I kind of have to set a deadline. If it's close, I'll go, okay, cool, I'm going to launch it in 2 months or something, and then any change I want to make before then I allow myself, but I'll just keep going and going and going if I don't give myself a deadline. I know it's getting close to done when I want to keep playing it more than I want to tweak it.
You know when a pedal's finished when you can't stop playing through it. On average, we do about 15 iterations of it before it's finished.
I never really know when a pedal is done. Sometimes it just never feels done because I always want to add more. Hey, I don't know if that's just the way that I is, but maybe I have to do that kind of thing in order to. I have to give myself a limit at one point, or else I'll just be changing it forever, and then it'll never be done.
I think the answer has a lot to do with how you start the process. If you have a very clear idea of what you want, it's not going to take long to complete it, and that's happened to me. I think with my Spittola design, a very clear-cut path. These are the steps I need to take to get something I like. Usually, what happens is I have a very hazy idea of what I want. I have a general concept of maybe the type of effect or the cool thing I want it to do, and then I kind of have to build up the meat around that, and that's what will take lots of iterations. And so I can try out different parameter sets, different features, and see what I like and what I don't. I need to physically try things. The last pedal I released was the T60, and that one went through about 35 revisions and took over a year, I'd say.
It depends on effect and the pedal idea. Yes Next I made I think in 5 years, but I think could make it in a half year. In those 5 years I had a daily job and other interests and things to do besides the pedals. For example, RNGD, random noise generating delay, I made in a year or so. It depends on things that I need to do outside the pedals, I think.
Probably never. Pedal is probably never finished, and you can always change something up and add little things to the pedal. But finishing a pedal is a very long process, since brainstorming to coming up with a PCB and all the right decisions for how it should sound. And then when I'm finished, I usually spend a few months expecting the pedal to fail. I bring it to the rehearsal space, I play it loud, I play it at home, and I'm trying to force the pedal to break, because I never trust myself that I did good enough job. At the end, when the graphics are done and when you have a finished product, you just sometimes hope for the best. And I think the key is to give yourself time and not rush into things, and then you're sure that it's finished, I guess.
Knowing when a design is finished is that's a tough call to make, I think. I'm working on something now that I thought was done 3 times already, and now I'm changing it again, and I haven't even gotten to the real prototyping phase yet. Everything's still on a breadboard, but I just keep changing it and drawing up the schematic, and then going to do the PCB design and thinking to myself, well, what if I did this? Maybe I should try that. And it just keeps going and going. It's getting to the point where I'm really feeling like it's close to being done though. But like I said, I've already thought that 3 times. So knowing when a design is done, I don't know. That's a tough call.
Jeff Hancock, farm pedals. How do I know when a pedal is done? I usually don't. It's a tricky thing. It's kind of like ever evolving, I guess. What is done really? Why does a pedal have to be done, man? Sometimes, I'll just do the math and I'll go into it and build a pedal blind, just release it. Sometimes I make like 100 versions. So I guess it depends on my mood.
Anytime I'm working on a pedal, I get the functionality correct, so get everything working the way it should. That's the thing that's an easy, like, okay, this is finished. Like this tap tempo is working, or it's making noise at all. And the part that drags out is kind of finalizing the voicing or the tone. So at a certain point, you just have to call it and call it complete. I kind of work with like a wider array of amps and make sure that it's not too bright with single coils and it's not too dark with humbuckers, and just try to find a nice place in the middle, and then test it with different amps doing the same thing. And anytime you create something or even play a pedal and you play with it over the course of a year, 2 years, you will notice strengths and weaknesses. So it's kind of a trick question. I don't really believe that they're ever finished. So pretty much I'll make like little changes run to run. I may brighten it up or darken it. Eventually you have so much that it's time to call it a version 2. And that's why you see, version 2, version 4, different versions and iterations all around, because there is pretty much always a way to improve it, but it's not necessarily one of those things that you are going to find without the experience of playing it for a long time.
We have multiple stations on building pedals. On the first station we put together the circuit boards. After that we wire the cables, hardware, drill the cases, put them all together, and then they are landing on my desk for testing and tweaking. After that we have the packing station for quality control and boxing up, and we're playing that with a full stack to make sure everything is right, and after that, shipping.
I have a really hard time with this, figuring out when a pedal's finished. I generally try to play it in a band situation, in a live situation. Does it really accomplish what I was trying to initially achieve? There's always improvements that can be made. I always think about improvements later on, so I just kind of, at some point, you gotta say, this is really cool, and get it out there and see how it goes. And you can always make changes later. how I think about it. How many iterations do I go through it? Oh man. Breadboard, prototype, build, test, breadboard, prototype, build, test, as long as it takes.
When we are at the very outset of a pedal design, we set a number of goals that we want to achieve. They tend to be fairly generic, similar now, because we've got a design ethos and such like, but for the specific pedals that we want to achieve certain things. So usually once those main goals are achieved, we then move the project on and it goes into the pre-production prototype phase. And at this point, they are essentially beta test versions, and they go out to people whose opinion we value and whose ears we trust. We then take on board what they've said. Some suggestions are great, some suggestions aren't. But if we have anything that we need to bake into the design, we do so at that point. And in extremis, we rip the design up and go again, and that's happened a couple of times. Then we go back out with the product, one final sort of test, make sure everyone's happy, test with different amps, different guitars, etc, etc. And then the design is properly frozen and we move towards getting it to market. I think major iterations, ones where we've had to change the PCB, change the design quite heavily. It's typically 3 iterations per pedal, not including minor resistor, capacitor changes and such like. But the most we've had of major changes has been 5. And then that doesn't take into account ones that we've junked. So.